welcome to Comics Chat. I'm Sarah Cook, I'm a comics writer, and this is a show where I talk with comics creators and fans about their favorite comics and why they love them. If you'd like to follow me elsewhere, you can find me on social media at Sarah C. Comics, and you can subscribe to my newsletter. The link to do that is in the show notes. And if you enjoy this show, like and subscribe. My conversation today is with Karla Medrano a.k.a. Moon the Storyteller. She is the creator behind the comic series Luna, which is a really great series. It's about a queen who's the only one who can save her world. I really enjoy Luna as a character. I think the artwork is beautiful. I definitely recommend checking it out, and the link to find it is in the show notes as well. And Karla and I chatted about, because it's Women's History Month, she suggested instead of talking about one comic, talking about a female character, which I thought was a great idea. And the character she chose was the Marvel character Tilda Johnson, aka Nightshade. Who's a really fascinating character. She's a genius, she has a PhD, and she's basically self-taught in a range of other scientific fields. I read more of her comics to prepare for this conversation. I didn't know a lot about her, but I'm really interested in her now. She starts off as a villain and kind of has this arc over the decades where she becomes a hero. She takes her own life at one point, so if you do want to read more of her comics, be aware of that. But this being superhero comics, she comes back. And she's just a really interesting character in a lot of ways. One of the things that we talk about is how when she's introduced, she's wearing this in the 60s, basically just a little bikini. And so Karla and I kind of chatted about, the representation of women in comics and how there's this, of course, history of women being so scantily clad and how objectifying that is. And I just wanted to point out, because I was thinking about that kind of in relation to my earlier conversation with Lydia Monet, and we were talking about some of the nudity and the sex in the comic Faithless, and how different that felt than the way Nightshade is introduced, or the way so many female characters, I think, in particularly in superhero comics, but in comics in general, are portrayed as being so scantily clad. And I think something like Faithless, or I've talked before on social media about sex criminals and others. I mean, there are things like, Oh Joy Sex Toy, or Safe Sex, where there is a lot of nudity and female nudity, but it's empowering as opposed to objectifying. And I think the difference is the intention behind it. Was it put there for basically the male gaze, or is there an actual story reason behind it? And do the female characters have agency? And I think if there's a story-related reason for the nudity, and if the characters, are choosing that, if they have agency in the scene and they're not just wearing these little bikinis for the male gaze, then that can be a really powerful, super empowering thing. And there are a lot of comics that do that I love. But if it's just there for male gazy reasons, that is pretty objectifying. So I just wanted to make that distinction. But yeah, this was a really great chat. We chatted a lot about Nightshade, a lot about women in comics, a lot about Marvel and the MCU and where it's headed these days. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope that you check out Luna. Hi, welcome to Comics Chat. I'm here with Karla Medrano, creator of Luna. And we are going to be talking about the Marvel character Nightshade. But before that, I wanted to ask you a little bit about Luna, and kind of if you have anything coming up with the book that you wanted to mention, or just give us a little intro into the comic.
Sure. And thank you for inviting me. Thank you so much
Thanks for
for,
being
I
here.
know your time is limited, and to be included, on these first few episodes, I'm really privileged. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for
Um,
being here. This is
yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah. I'm Karla. I do go by Moon, the Storyteller. That's my pen name. But yeah, I'm the creator of Luna. It's a comic book series from Konkret Comics, and it's about a queen. It's a futuristic tale, so it's set in the year 10,000, and it's about a queen who discovers she's the only one with the power to save her dying world from an evil threat that's coming. So we've launched issue one, and that's the first print one run sold out now, but now it's back on in stock. And we just finished the Kickstarter, which is a crowdfunding initiative for issue two. So right now, issue two is with that letterer. She's doing the final edits on the grammar and like, can you move this box down here? I want to
Yeah.
add this, stuff like that. So that will be hopefully ready within the next 2 weeks. And then we'll be packaging up the digital version and send that out to everyone who supported the campaign. And then we'll be working on the actual sending it to print and getting the issue two out. And then once it's out, it's going to be on the website. So essentially issue one and two is done. And this year, I'll be working on issue three.
Very
Yeah.
cool. That's
Thank
exciting.
you. Yeah, thank you.
Part of what I have the Kickstarter page for issue number 2 pulled up. Part of what I think is so cool about Luna is it is this really futuristic like adventure story that takes place in space, and it feels very kind of like X-Men-y, which is awesome. But it's also kind of it focuses on this character Luna, who's just really interesting as a character too, in addition to just kind of being in this really exciting world. Like she as a character is very cool. Um, and there is a
Thank you.
quote on the page, if I can find it now without too much scrolling. Yeah, so the you describe on the Kickstarter, you describe it as it's a love story with incredible superpowers. And it'll remind everyone, especially our children, that they're loved and have the power to change the world. Um,
Mhm,
and I love that just the optimistic message of it, I think
mhm.
is really resonant.
Yeah, and I hope it, resonates with many more people. Yeah, our children, there are a lot of great programs, a lot of great books, and Luna is just, one more addition to that conversation of empowering our children to be the best version that they can possibly be. So, I'm not sure, there's a lot of kids that grew up in really hard circumstances, traumatic circumstances. There are children who have great home circumstances, but all of them, collectively can be reminded that they hold a power within themselves. And hopefully they're able to express that. Um, and then, essentially affect change in their environment and in their community. So like I said, there are a lot of children out there who aren't in the best of circumstances.
Mhm.
Some are really in horrific circumstances. Um, and I don't know if this story will reach them, but
Mhm.
for those children who do see this is for them. This is dedicated to them. I wrote this story for my son,
Oh,
from a queen's perspective. This is
mhm.
how a queen acts. This is what a queen does.
I love that.
And not necessarily, we're not royalty or anything, but you can be a king, you can be a queen,
Mhm.
and you can affect change around you and make your world, your community a better place just by being who you are and being a good person. And then if you can, you fight the battles that other people can't fight.
Mhm.
So yeah, but this story is mainly for our children. And so yeah, I hope that gets people more and more more aware that this is a family story. This is not just
Mhm.
for adults. This is not just for teenagers. This is for the whole family.
Yeah. I I like that a lot. And I think it's I just think it's really important as a writer to think about the messaging of your story, because it's one thing to just put a story out there that's entertaining, or has a lot of action or a lot of like cool visuals, and that stuff's all good.
Mhm.
But I think about the ways that like the media I consume and the media I consumed as a kid like really affected me and really affected the way I think about the world and about myself. And I think it's important to have an awareness of that and to have like an intentionality with your work.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I agree. Like I said, there are a lot of great stories, but I think the
Mhm.
ones that hit home the
Mhm.
hardest are the ones that have a message behind it,
Yeah.
and even, from comic books to movies, when you have an underlying theme and a message that can really resonate with people, those are the ones that are the most memorable. So I hope Luna
Yeah.
is that for people.
Yeah, for sure. um well, was there anything else about Luna you wanted to mention or should we hop on into Nightshade?
Well, the only thing about Luna is that the pre-orders have closed, but in a few months, issue 2 will be ready will be available. So, but right
Okay.
now, Luna issue number 1 is available on Konkret Comics website, or you can go to my social media platforms at Moon the Storyteller and just click on the link in my bio to purchase issue 1.
Okay, very cool.
Mhm.
um so the character you wanted to chat about is Nightshade. Do you want to talk a little bit about what it is that interested you about her?
Well, Nightshade, so how I came across Nightshade was I made a commitment. I was telling you before
Mhm.
I made a commitment to read the X-Men because X-Men is my favorite. They're my favorite comic book characters.
Mhm.
I love the Avengers movies, but X-Men is like drama. They even though they're mutants, they to me are more relatable
Mhm.
than some of the other comic book groups.
Yeah,
So I made a commitment to go back to read Uncanny X-Men issue number 1. So as I
that's
was reading
awesome.
though, and it's a lot. I'm
A
like
lot.
not even. I think I'm on 10. Um, but as I was reading, the very first issue, Marvel Girl, which is Jean Grey, she was introduced. But there's not a whole lot of females. So I was like, when is the next female gonna come? When is the next
Mhm.
female coming in the Marvel universe? So eventually Wanda was the next one. And then Polaris. Um, we saw Emma, we see Storm. And so, but as I'm researching these names, I come across Nightshade. And I'm like, who is Nightshade? So she appeared in Captain America and the Falcon and back, I don't even know what year this is, but back in the 60s. And she's titled Queen of the Werewolves. So this picture here, she's
Yeah.
running. Here Steve, he has his suit and he has his shield, and then she's running
Mhm.
with a bikini.
In a bikini.
So
Of course.
I'm like, okay, obviously this is a reflection of the times. It's a
Mhm.
reflection of Black exploitation.
Yeah.
But I was curious to see, how they developed this character. So, um, you want me to get into the story?
Oh, sure.
Um, so I'm like, I haven't read the Captain America and Falcon series. I think this is the first one I've actually read of this time period.
Mhm.
But basically, they are the Falcon receives a letter from his friend who's in prison to saying, something's going on, please come. So, back in the 60s, it took a while for the messages to come across. So they didn't get there till like a week later. So by this time, the prison has been overrun by werewolves. And they're like, where are these werewolves coming from? Well, it's from Nightshade. She is very intelligent, and she was commissioned by the Yellow Claw to create this formula to turn people into werewolves, and so she can build an army of werewolves to take over the world.
Mhm.
That's the plot. So so she actually ends up giving the serum to Falcon, and then Falcon and Captain America end up fighting. And
Mhm.
so the Yellow Claw was trying to kill Captain America, and he said, "Oh, what better way to do that than by his friend?"
Mhm.
So that's where Nightshade comes in. Um, but I just, what really struck me about this character, unfortunately, was that she was half dressed,
Yeah.
but very intelligent.
Mhm.
And I was saying even Storm was introduced. When she was first appeared, she was naked.
Yeah.
Her hair was covering everything, but
And that was just fine.
mm, right,
Evidently.
right. And whereas when the white women were introduced, when Wanda and Polaris and
Mhm.
Marvel Girl were introduced, they were covered.
Yeah.
So you really see, even though, these stories, we still create storylines from these characters. The way they were introduced really is a reflection of how Black women were viewed by white male writers and
Yeah.
artists.
Mhm.
So, I just thought it was really interesting. And I don't, unfortunately, I wasn't alive at the time. I don't know anyone who was that was
Mhm.
reading these books, but you can see how they perceived Black women during this time.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was really interesting. So I'm looking forward to reading more about her. That she does
Mhm.
pop up in other issues. And I think there was even, I was reading, I think there was even a live version, a live adaptation of her
Mm.
in one of these superhero shows. I can't remember if it was Luke Cage. I
Oh,
can't remember.
interesting. Hmm.
Yeah. So, but it doesn't talk, I don't think it referenced her werewolf, serum. But yeah. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading more about her.
Yeah. Same. I didn't really know too much about her either, but I've been reading a little bit more about her. And it is really interesting because I think we talk a lot about how women characters in general are portrayed in comics and about just like the little bathing suits that they wear and how their physiques are and how exploitative it is just
Hmm.
in general. But then when you
Hmm.
start to break that down, it's like, well, at least the white women have clothes. At least they have costumes and they're covered up. And it's even worse when you start to kind of break it down. Um, and I think that's really interesting. I think that's kind of a part of the conversation that we
Hmm.
don't really have when we talk about women characters in comics.
Yeah. And this was back in the 60s. So now it's more equal. Both
Mhm.
white and Black and Asian and Hispanic hardly have any clothes when depending on who's drawing them.
Yeah.
So, that now we still see though that very, misogynistic view take
Mhm.
on a woman's costume in comics. So when the artist was drawing Luna, some of the first mock-ups of Luna, I was very clear. I said she has too much cleavage.
Mhm.
Her breasts are too large. I said
Yeah.
she's when you look at her, I don't want you to look at her breasts.
Mhm.
That's why she's drawn the way she's drawn, because I did not want to, even though she's a beautiful woman, she's intelligent. The story is her personality and her nature, not the way
Mhm.
she looks. So I was very intentional with all the characters, all the female characters in the story. They're all covered up. Now the men, they take their shirt off. But
Nice.
that's not the same as in when a
Yeah.
woman takes her shirt
Mhm.
off. So but yeah, that now, like back in the 60s, you can clearly see how they treated white women and Black women, but
Mhm.
now it's across the board.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Storm and Polaris, think and so many other characters, they're in leotards,
Mhm.
no support bra.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what, who
Why?
is drawing these characters?
Yeah.
Nobody fight. Who's gonna go to war in a leotard?
Yeah.
I mean,
It really bothers me too, and that's like it's something that I talk about with artists too. Like I don't want the women to have huge breasts. I want them to look like actual real humans, and
mm-hmm,
it is upsetting. It's upsetting that it's still, and it's not like I don't know, there are circumstances. If there's like a story-based reason for it, it's not that there's never a reason, but it just seems to still be such the default in a lot of books
mm-hmm.
for women to be portrayed that way, and it is frustrating.
It is, and especially when you have a really great female character, but you can tell when it's created by
Yeah.
a male writer versus a
Mhm.
female writer. You can tell
Yeah.
just by the cover. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, ugh, another missed
What?
opportunity.
Yeah.
And I just not a big fan of fan service. I just don't
Mhm.
I don't there's so many people that buy comics not necessarily because they want to see a woman with big boobs. It's because they actually
Yeah.
enjoy comics.
Right.
And if we make it normal not to sexualize these characters, then
Mhm.
eventually it'll be normal,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree, and I think that, even just from a story perspective, I feel like having women running around in leotards, like, actually pulls me out of the story because it's so unrealistic.
Hmm.
And yeah, obviously, if it's a superhero book, like, the whole plot is unrealistic, but you kind of buy into that, like, you buy into the world that they live in. But even in that world, I don't think women would be running around in leotards all the time,
No.
and it just is like it still is kind of jarring to me to see that, and I think it detracts from this story because it's obviously just put there for people to gawk at and not for
Right.
any kind of, like, furthering of the story or any real creative purpose,
Hmm.
um, and I think it detracts from the story.
It does. I honestly don't take you seriously. Now, like you
Yeah.
said, if it's a
Mhm.
reason why they are dressed in a certain way, for example, if it's a warrior costume, sometimes
Mhm.
um some of these folklores and some of these fantasy stories, the women didn't have armor. They had, just like the Dora Milaje, they had,
Yeah. Mhm.
even though they was covered, there still is not as much clothes as I would personally prefer, but
Mhm.
they're not, but you see what I'm saying? If there's a reason
Yeah.
why they are dressed a certain way, that's different.
Mhm.
But when there's no reason, for example,
Yeah.
there's a creator, I don't even remember. I'm not, even if I knew the name, I wouldn't say it. But he showed his cover for his upcoming Kickstarter, and it was 5 characters, one female, the rest were guys. All the guys were dressed.
Mhm.
The girl had on a sports bra, and
Uh,
like,
yeah.
I'm like, why does she have a sports bra? Why doesn't she have on clothes?
Yeah.
You know what I
It's so
mean?
ridiculous.
Yeah, so and it was so funny because someone actually asked, like, why is she the only one not dressed for whatever
Mhm.
they're about to get into? And the answer was, "Oh, I have to give the fellas something to look at." So you feel like your story's not that strong enough then. You feel
Mhm.
like you have to do this. Your story isn't
Yeah.
strong, you know?
Right, exactly.
Let's talk about Emma Frost because Emma Frost is like probably an exception to this
Mhm.
white women were always dressed because Emma
It's true.
Frost,
Never dressed.
even back now it's like, oh my gosh, it's off the chain like what she wears. But even when she was introduced back in I think the 60s, she had on leotards,
Mhm.
right? So it's like, okay, I'm not maybe it's because she was a villain,
Mhm.
maybe that's
Yeah.
why she was half dressed. But the ones that were considered the good guys, they were always dressed. The
Mhm.
ones that kind of were sitting on the fence, like Wanda, she was in a leotard, but her the skin was actually like pantyhose, like she
Yeah.
had the
Mhm.
leotard, but it was a lighter color. So she, even though she
Yeah.
had a leotard, she was still covered. And then
Mhm.
you have the villains who sometimes, like Emma Frost, was half dressed.
Yeah.
So it's just very curious. It's just very interesting to see that distinction.
Mhm.
And then, of course, I told you about Storm and Nightshade. They were either half dressed or completely naked. Like
Yeah.
Storm was completely naked when we first saw her. I'm like, what?
Like,
How
why?
naked? So it was just very interesting. So I'm really I'm looking forward to seeing the evolution of comics, through this you know, going back and reading some of these comic books from the 60s and 70s and stuff like that. So
Yeah. It is at least better than it was then.
yes, yes. Some
Um,
of the dialogue is obviously outdated.
mhm.
Um, but I think, the writing, the stories themselves were amazing. You know,
Hmm.
I think i- if I ever had the opportunity to pitch for Marvel, I would definitely pull from these older stories because
Hmm.
the action and the drama, it was just it's unparalleled. Nothing matches, these early comics,
Yeah. Yeah, those old comics, and they are so fast paced.
Mhm.
But they manage to be like fast paced in a way that's still like engaging. Like it doesn't
Mhm.
feel, it's really, really fast and like a lot happens on a page, but it doesn't feel too fast. Like it
Yeah.
still pulls you in.
Yeah, and I think, and they do it because it's only like 22 pages, but they have a lot of dialogue on
Yeah.
these pages,
Hmm.
like this. This is a lot of dialogue,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
I think times have changed. We don't usually see that much dialogue anymore. Like I don't know,
Hmm.
Luna certainly doesn't have that much dialogue. Um, which is why the artwork is really important.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, they this was like these are masterpieces. I'm not going to take away from that.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
Um, so one of the later representations of Nightshade that I was reading um, was, I think it was 2014, if I still have it pulled up here, when she shows up in Nighthawk, 2016.
2016.
um,
Okay.
and she's wearing actual real clothes, and she has like a short haircut, and she's just her kind of the way that she sort of is portrayed overall. She's, I think, a lot more confident. Um, but like real, not like villainy confidence, like actual kind of internal confidence.
Hmm.
Um,
She also was in the Marvel's Voices
oh, cool.
Nightshade Infinity comic in 2022. So that's
Mm,
interesting. She had actually four. She was in the Marvel's Voices Nightshade Infinity comic number 71, 72, 73, and 74. So that's probably, oh, and then also Spider Woman in
mm.
2023. So she's
She's been
actually
all over
popped up.
lately.
Yeah, she's popped up a few times. So I'm looking forward to seeing oh, and Black Panther too.
Mm.
So I'm looking forward to seeing her. Yeah, and
Yeah, I'm gonna have
however.
to look up more of this.
Yeah, you definitely got me intrigued because when you go into the Marvel app and type in Nightshade, she has like 23 results. So she's been here. Yeah. So,
Was just kind of reading about her character. I think her arc is really interesting because she starts off as a villain, and then in that Nighthawk, she's kind of, it read to me as kind of like an anti-hero. Like she's still talking about like killing people,
yeah.
but it's not like if she were a full-on hero at this point, she wouldn't be talking about killing people. But she's kind of moving in that direction. And then I
Uh-huh.
think again, just according to Wikipedia, like during Secret Empire, she actually takes over the Nighthawk mantle.
Yeah. And she makes, I think she first appears in early 1970s. Then she comes back later in the 70s, and then she doesn't come back until the 1990s.
Mhm. Wow.
So yeah, she was forgotten for a minute. Hmm. So yeah, she's really interesting, and I hope that Marvel does more with these characters, like these lesser known characters. Like I really feel
Mhm.
like in their like the what if cartoons, they can bring these characters into those storylines. Maybe not
Yeah.
necessarily give them their own series or movies, but
Hmm.
bring those characters into these what if episodes just so we can see
Yeah.
more of them. I think that, instead of harping on the same characters we've seen, like
Yeah.
Peggy Carter, we've seen her as Captain America like 80
Hmm.
times. We get it. She
Yeah.
can do a good job,
Yeah.
we get it. So I hope that they do more with that series, and bring in these other characters. Yeah.
I agree. I think that would be really cool because I think there are so many characters who are kind of like lesser known, but they're really interesting and they have really interesting backstories, and there's so much that you could do like with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the what if stories are a great place to do some of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love those. I love that whole series. Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
And they recently created a new character. She's Native American, and she has the power of the Tesseract, which I don't remember her name,
Oh
but she's
yeah.
a brand new character.
She
And
was
so
cool.
yeah, and I hope we see more of her. Like, I mean, she could even, I would even dare to say she could even probably have her own Disney animation. I mean, her character
Yeah.
is so intriguing to me.
Hmm.
So I mean, they can even do a whole movie for her. I feel like it would do very well.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so too. Just as a character, she's really interesting and her whole
Hmm.
origin story is so cool.
Hmm.
Um, I would definitely support a movie.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Like, and
Mhm.
she, I don't, I forgot what the episode, how it ended, but basically, if she had these powers, she would have been able to stop the colonizers from taking over and completely wiping out her people.
Mhm.
So I really like that whole concept, because it is like, what if this really actually happened? And
Mhm.
then she pops up later, I think in the episode with, of course, it was Peggy Carter, I believe.
Mhm.
And what's Thor's sister's name? I forget.
Yeah.
Hella. She pops up with an episode for Hella too. So it was
Yeah.
really, I like season 2. I really
I
did.
liked season 2 a lot. I
Hmm.
liked the first season, but I really liked season 2 too.
Hmm. But I love this series. I mean, I think that, yeah, like, you're right. I think the what if episode, this series is a great opportunity for these lesser known characters to kind of have their day, and see what the audience likes. Like, if the audience wants
Yeah.
more of these characters, give them a series.
Yeah. Mhm.
But I think Disney should start listening to what people want,
Yeah.
and hire great writers,
Mhm.
who don't just do like the typical same script.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think I agree. Because I feel like when people talk about like superhero fatigue, and not just with Marvel, but I think that's what it is. I don't think it's superhero fatigue. Like people love superheroes. I
Mhm.
think it's just when it's the same kind of script over and over. And there's so many
Mhm.
different things that you can do with superhero stories. And I feel like what are good examples? Like The Boys is something that I mean it has issues like it pretty violent, but it's different. It's kind of like a unique kind of
Take
superhero
on,
story or
yeah.
like Peacemaker, just different. They're different.
Mhm.
Um and I like there's so much that you can do with a superhero story. It doesn't have to be the same kind of thing.
Yeah. And I was telling my husband this. We just sat and saw Damsel on Netflix.
Oh, I haven't watched that yet, but I keep hearing
Oh, it
good
is so
things.
good. Oh my gosh, it is so good. And I'm not just saying it because Millie Brown is in it, because I love her, but
Mhm.
she and her team, because she was one of the executive producers, but the script was
Wow.
amazing.
That's
And
awesome.
what you think is going to happen is not going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, they were surprising us at every scene. Like, we thought that this was going to happen. This was going to happen. No, none of it happened. The opposite. So, but we were saying how, we like stories like this because we had no idea that this would end the way it did, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And there's, like you said, there's so much in the comic books that you can pull from,
Mhm.
that I feel like there's no reason why a story should be the same as this story, or the same as this story.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that's missing from these stories is the human element. Like,
Mhm.
what endeared us to Tony Stark
Yeah.
and Captain America was the human side of them. Like, they were
Yeah.
flawed. They, had moments where they, felt like giving up. They were unsure. They were uncertain. Whereas now everything is very, very easy, for these
Mhm.
characters. And that was something that I struggled with in my writing too. Like, issue 2 for Luna ended in a completely different way.
Mhm.
But the editors 3 of them. Like I have a story editor, I have someone who, writes with me throughout each scene. I have somebody who, and then I have the editors in chief of Konkret Comics. They all said the same thing, and I was so pissed and mad, but they were right. Is that you're making things too easy for Luna,
Mhm.
and
I've
so
gotten that note too from
yeah,
editors.
yeah, and I'm
Mhm.
like, well, she deserves not to struggle. I don't want her to struggle, but then I take away the experience for the
Yeah.
readers. I want the
Mhm.
readers to feel her struggle, and so that they can feel like, okay, she's overcome this, I have too,
Yeah. Mhm.
So it's hard for us to go to put our characters through that, but we
Mhm.
have to do it. And I think that with the new movies, that's what they do. They make
Yeah,
things really too easy
I agree.
for them to they just make it too easy. We don't see that struggle. We don't see that they've lost. That's why
Mhm.
everyone loves Infinity War. Everyone lost. Like we
Yeah.
lost.
Mhm.
That's why that's why to this day Infinity War is probably the number one film
Yeah.
of Marvel,
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah. I agree, and I think that's one of the things that the MCU did well early on, like each of the Avengers, except for Hawkeye and Black Widow, but had their own movie before the first Avengers movie. And even Hawkeye and Black Widow were in earlier movies, so we kind of got to see them like each sort of showcased and kind of like going through their own struggles and overcoming their own challenges before you throw them into this movie where it's like planetary level stakes.
Hmm.
um, I feel like if you had just started with the first Avengers movie, you wouldn't have gotten any of that. And it would have just been too plot driven and they would have had to beat Loki, but it would have been kind of too easy for them.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like, I don't know, I think that's a lot of what more recent movies are doing. Like they're not um spending enough time with the characters and they're not showing them like overcoming like actually overcoming struggles. It's they just something's thrown at them and they kind of immediately overcome it and the plot moves on.
Hmm.
You know where
Yeah,
it's going.
right. And I'm trying to think like Avengers versus the X-Men, how the X-Men, I think what endears me to the X-Men more, like the Avengers movies, like those movies were amazing. Um, but what endears me to the X-Men more is that I see their struggle and I see their
Mhm.
mistakes and I see their regrets. Like they regret, X-Men, the original animation series, we saw
Mhm.
they made a lot of mistakes. you know, um, but a few episodes later, or maybe not even to the next season, were they able to rectify that mistake?
Mhm.
Whereas now it's like that mistake, oh, I messed up. Like the Marvels movie. I actually did like the Marvels movie. I thought it was actually
Mhm.
pretty good. But one thing that I would critique about it was that we didn't see that relationship between Carol and Monica. We never saw
Mhm.
like we saw her leave her as a child,
Yeah.
and then we never saw that interaction again. So
Yeah.
it's not even like the movies are not even cohesive anymore. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mhm.
So it's just I don't know. I don't know what happened. Like I don't know what because Kevin Feige is still in charge of everything. So
Mhm.
I just don't know what happened. What
Well,
what do you think? Who do you think would have been a really great team? Because I mean, Shang-Chi is definitely should
mhm.
be a part of the new Avengers.
Yeah.
Um, Miss Marvel.
Mhm.
I think we did say Kate Bishop. I think she said that she was a part of the new Avengers. Do you think they should bring Thor back?
Hmm. I'd like to see I just want to see Thor like realize that the Loki variant is the one like holding everything together. Like
Yes,
bring him
yes.
back for that moment.
Yeah, I think that would be a really great moment. And they did a good job with Loki too, but I think a lot of
Yeah.
it had to do with Tom Hiddleston. Like
Yeah. Mhm.
is that his name? Hiddleston, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think he did a lot of writing, but I think he added a lot to the script
Yeah.
and
That
he did a lot
mhm.
of ad libs. Like when I was looking at like the making of Loki, he was very instrumental in a lot of those scenes. So it does help when you have a good writer, good
Mhm.
actors, And then people, the producers who are willing to say, yes, we can do that, so
Yeah.
it's been like kind of like you said, that what made the Avengers so special was the chemistry that they had.
Hmm.
One of my favorite scenes was in the Ultron movie where they're trying to pick
Hmm.
up that Thor's hammer. And just that whole scene was
Yeah.
just hilarious.
Hmm.
And it was so, and then they referenced that moment where Steve almost picked it up.
Hmm.
And then they showed him overcoming that. Like, once he admitted that he knew who killed Tony's mom, now that was the next movie. Then the next movie, he picked up the hammer.
Yeah.
And those
Yeah.
are the kind of moments that
Hmm.
I don't see that in any other movies anymore. People blame it on having female leads, but that's not it.
No.
That's not,
Mm-mm.
because comic books have always had female leads. It's just that the writing and the whole production is not the same.
Yeah, that frustrates me too when people are like, "Oh, it's the MCU," and like now
Mhm.
that's what's making it, but it's not that at all. It's people just wanna, I don't know, say that it's that, but I think what it is just that there isn't like a cohesive kind of vision for where the MCU is going.
Exactly. That pretty much sums it up. But it's been thank you so much. If that's my time, I gotta head out. But
Oh.
thank you so much, Sarah, for inviting me to
Oh,
chat.
thanks for coming on. This was great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And,
Um,
good luck with everything Luna related.
Thank you. Thank you again. I can be found on TikTok and Instagram at Moon the Storyteller.
Right, sounds good. I will be sure to include that in the show notes.
Thank you, Sarah.
Oh, thank you.